Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And before we dive into today's really important topic, I need to ask you to do me a quick favor. If you care about how government decisions affect your paycheck, your benefits, and your everyday financial security, please hit that subscribe button right now. We're breaking down stories like this in plain English, without the political spin, and subscribing really helps this channel reach more people who need this information. All right, let's get into it. Today, I want to talk about something that's been quietly stressing a lot of people out, even if they don't fully realize it yet, and that's the government shutdown and what it actually means for you and your money. Because when you hear the words government shutdown, it sounds like something distant, like a fight happening far away in Washington between politicians you've never met. But the truth is, when funding lapses, it stops being just a political headline and starts becoming a household issue. It affects paychecks, benefits, services, and honestly, your peace of mind. And there's one part of this shutdown that most people aren't really talking about yet, but once you understand it, it may completely change how you look at what's coming next. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. When you hear about a government shutdown, does it make you feel anxious, confused, or just exhausted by the constant drama? Drop a comment and let me know, because a lot of people are feeling the same way right now, even if they're not saying it out loud. So let's break down what's actually happening. The federal government hit a funding deadline, and once again, Congress didn't finish its budget work in time. That part, unfortunately, isn't new. What is different this time is the reason everything stalled. This shutdown isn't really about running out of money on paper. It's about a deep political fight over policy, especially immigration enforcement, and how aggressive the federal government should be in that area. Funding officially lapsed late Friday night, triggering what's called a partial shutdown. And that word partial really matters here, because it means not everything stops at once. Some agencies are fully funded and continue operating like normal. Some agencies are shut down entirely, and others are stuck in this uncomfortable middle ground where employees are still required to work but aren't getting paid yet. Imagine showing up to your job every day, knowing your paycheck isn't coming until politicians reach a deal. That's the reality for thousands of federal workers right now. At the center of this shutdown is funding for the Department of Homeland Security. The Trump administration pushed for a DHS budget of roughly $64 billion to continue aggressive immigration enforcement, especially after 2 U.S. citizens were killed in Minneapolis during an incident involving federal agents. From the administration's point of view, this funding is about public safety and giving agents the tools they believe they need to do their jobs. Democrats, however, said they weren't willing to approve that funding without significant reforms. They want limits on tactics like masked agents, large-scale sweeps, and arrests without warrants. Republicans pushed back hard on that, arguing that restricting those tools would make enforcement more dangerous for agents and less effective overall. So you've got two sides completely dug in, neither wanting to be seen as backing down, and while they're fighting, the deadline passed. Now the Senate stepped in to try to keep things from spiraling out of control. They passed a compromise bill that fully funds several parts of the government for the rest of the year and adds a short 2-week extension just for DHS. The goal was simple: reopen most government operations, reduce the immediate damage, and buy time to keep negotiating until mid-February. Senate leaders described it as hitting the pause button, not solving the underlying problem. But this is where things start to get messy. That Senate bill still has to pass the House, and the House is operating on a razor-thin margin. Speaker Mike Johnson can't afford to lose more than one Republican vote if Democrats don't step in to help him. And right now, Democrats have made it clear they're in no rush to bail him out. Inside the Republican caucus, there's also pressure from hardline members who want to attach unrelated legislation, like the SAVE Act, which would require proof of citizenship and photo ID to vote. Johnson knows that adding something like that would almost certainly kill the bill in the Senate, dragging the shutdown out even longer. So he's stuck in this impossible position, trying to keep his party united without blowing up the only deal on the table. President Trump stepped in publicly and made his position very clear. He wants the bill passed as is, with no changes, and signed immediately. From the administration's perspective, a long shutdown hurts financial markets, damages public confidence, and weakens leverage later on. Even if they want tougher enforcement policies, letting the government grind to a halt doesn't actually help them get there. So the big question becomes, where does this leave you? This is where I want to slow things down, because this is the part that actually matters to people watching at home. If you're on Social Security, supplemental security income, or similar federal benefits, your payments are continuing. That's a huge relief, and it's worth saying very clearly. Checks and direct deposits are still going out on schedule. The Social Security Administration has kept offices open, hearings are still happening, and benefits are not being paused. This is something people worry about every single time there's a shutdown, and right now, there's no interruption. That said, services can slow down. With fewer staff available, you may see longer wait times, delayed paperwork, and slower responses. It's frustrating, but it's not the nightmare scenario people often fear when they hear the word shutdown. If you're a federal worker or you live with one, this situation feels much more personal. Some employees are considered essential and are required to work without pay until funding is restored. Others are furloughed and sent home. Historically, Congress has approved back pay after shutdowns, but that doesn't help you cover rent, groceries, or gas right now. And lower-wage federal workers tend to feel this the hardest because they have less financial cushion. Contractors are in an even tougher position. Many of them don't receive back pay at all. If you run a small business that relies on government contracts, even a short shutdown can create serious cash flow problems. Bills don't stop just because Congress is arguing. So what about the broader economy? Right now, markets are relatively calm. Investors have seen this before, and because this shutdown is partial and expected to be temporary, there hasn't been a major sell-off. Consumer confidence hasn't collapsed either, but that calm is fragile. Every shutdown creates hidden costs, like delayed permits, slowed inspections, and lost productivity. These costs don't always show up immediately, but they add up over time. One analyst recently called it legislative malpractice that Congress is still fighting over a fiscal year budget in February. And while that sounds harsh, the point is that governing by deadline and crisis makes everything more expensive and less predictable. That uncertainty affects hiring decisions, investment plans, and long-term economic growth. There's another subtle issue that people often miss. Every time a shutdown happens and the damage feels limited, it lowers the political cost of doing it again. Lawmakers start to think, well, we survived last time, so maybe we can push a little harder next time. That's how short disruptions slowly turn into bigger, more dangerous ones. Even if this shutdown ends in a few days, the core disagreement over immigration enforcement isn't going away, and DHS funding could become a flashpoint again very soon. So what should you do personally beyond just watching the news? If your income depends directly or indirectly on federal funding, this is a reminder, if possible, to keep a small cash buffer. Even 1 or 2 months of expenses can make a huge difference in situations like this. I know that's easier said than done, but even a modest emergency fund buys you options. It's also important to avoid making big financial decisions based on fear-driven headlines. Short shutdowns rarely cause long-term market damage. Selling investments or changing retirement plans because of temporary political chaos often does more harm than good. If you rely on government services, start applications, renewals, and paperwork earlier than you think you need to. Even when offices stay open, everything tends to move slower during periods like this. And finally, this is a mindset thing. These events are stressful because they feel out of your control, and that feeling is real. It's okay to feel frustrated or worn down by it, but focusing on what you can control, like your budget, your savings habits, and staying informed from reliable sources, helps keep that stress from taking over. What's interesting is that President Trump's approach this time is actually more cautious than in some past standoffs. He's pushing to reopen the government first and fight the policy battles later, which tells you how seriously the economic side of this is being taken, even if the politics are loud. If the House passes the Senate deal, most of the government reopens and DHS gets a short extension while talks continue. If they don't, the shutdown drags on and the costs start rising faster. Either way, this isn't the end of the story. It's more like an intermission. The key takeaway is this: your benefits are safe for now. The economy isn't collapsing, but repeated shutdowns quietly chip away at stability in ways that really do matter over time. Staying informed, staying calm, and planning conservatively are still the best tools you have. And before you go, if this breakdown helped you understand what's actually going on and how it affects you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're covering these issues as they happen, and your support really helps keep this information coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.